My quarter and 9:07 a.m., and I'm in a Zoom call watching our CTO weep into his artisanal espresso, while Sharon from HR Chain smiles through another resilient circle. Meanwhile, I'm staring at the email I just sent. Subject line, notice. Attachment. My resignation letter, CC'd to 19 of our top billing clients. One of them already replied, "Wherever you land, we follow." But let me rewind. This isn't your typical boohoo. My boss was mean tail. This is about precision, pressure, and planting charges under the floorboards of a sinking ship, while smiling at the captain. The week started with a glitch. Not a software one, those I eat for breakfast, but something human. I got copied on an internal thread by accident. Thread title, Redundant Asset Audit. There I was, me. Listed between our outdated projector and a guy who hadn't shown up since March 2020. Next to my name, legacy employee, overpaid, underseen, low risk. I didn't panic. I screen captured it, made a backup, then started playing dumb. The dumb ones survive. The dumb ones get underestimated. I let them think I was just another faded sticker on their startup fridge. Then came the kicker. I built a pipeline for one of our largest enterprise clients. Let's call them Apex Systems. Their CFO had my number saved under fixes what your engineers break. Months I'd been the invisible glue holding that contract together. And then 3 days before renewal, my access to the repo vanished. I messaged IT, crickets. I called my manager, Victor, a man who wore designer sneakers like they were bulletproof and said disruption like a threat. He answered on the 4th ring, said he was in back-to-back calls, and hung up without waiting for me to speak. 2 hours later, Sharon summoned me for a chat. That's when she said it. The same tone you'd use to explain to a dog why it's not allowed on the couch. "You're lucky we tolerate you." Tolerate me? I nodded. I smiled like a Midwestern serial killer. And in that exact moment, I made a decision that would crater their quarterly earnings and turn our sleek little SaaS firm into a Reddit case study on how to lose $30 million before lunch. Because here's what Sharon didn't know. I already had an offer, 6 figures, flexible, remote, a CTO who actually coded. But the money wasn't the revenge. The revenge was what I'd bring with me. Apex Systems wasn't the only account I'd built from scratch. There were 14 others. I knew their needs, their backdoors, their unspoken frustrations with our legacy code and performative support. I'd been their midnight savior, their emergency patch guy, their unpaid therapist when things caught fire. And I'd kept every thread, every thank you, every complaint they dared not send to my bosses. So when I called each of them just to catch up, I didn't pitch. I listened. I asked if they were happy. And one by one, they asked where I was headed. That resignation letter, it was more like a declaration of war. And in the CC list, I added one more name. Victor's wife, Sophia, just for fun. Because Victor had a second Slack account under the alias Disruption King, and it was logged into my old test server for months. Save screenshots. Next part, that's where the real avalanche begins, and trust me, you're going to want to see who gets buried. The first domino fell at 10:11 a.m. sharp. A client from Denver, CO, Chronologistics, NDA thicker than a Bible, replied to my resignation with 3 words. "We're moving too." No questions, no pleasantries, just moving. Within an hour, 5 others chimed in like it was some twisted reunion tour. Subject lines read like eulogies. "Thank you, Elias. Where you go, we go about our renewal." By noon, Sharon's perky HR Slack updates turned cryptic. All hands at 3, then emergency sync moved to 1:30, then nothing. Just digital tumbleweeds and a rising temperature in the office, so thick you could saute a rat on the standing desks. But let's get to the real meat. Victor. Around 12:03, he called me. First time in months. My phone buzzed with that smug LinkedIn photo of his. Designer sneakers, Bluetooth headset, $300 haircut that couldn't hide the hollow behind his eyes. Elias? Hey, heard about your move, he said like I just changed barbers. Let's chat, man to man. I put him on speaker, cracked open a seltzer, and let the silence eat him alive. Listen, he said, filling the void with verbal mulch. I know things have been tense. I just spoke with Apex Systems and they're saying weird stuff. That you've, poached their business. I let the pause drag until it turned radioactive. Then I replied, calm as a coma. Poached? No, I cultivated. You just forgot to water. Elias, come on. We can work something out. That's when I said it, the line I'd rehearsed in my head like a symphony. You can't unburn a bridge you pissed on, Victor. He hung up. By 2:00, someone from finance messaged me privately. Hey, your question. Did you by chance do a manual patch for Client Gamma's data API last fall? I'm seeing something odd. Odd was an understatement. That patch? Yeah, I did it because their out-of-country dev team botched a quarterly update, and the client was days away from a penalty that would have cost 6 figures. I fixed it while my dog was getting a tooth pulled. Never got credited. But guess what? I documented every line of that emergency fix. Even made a custom script with a UUID linked to my personal repo. Subtle like a tattoo inside a metaphor. They were unraveling now. Slowly. Beautifully. 3:15. Emergency all hands. I didn't join, but I heard from a mole. Bless you, Chloe from QA. Your Starbucks is on me forever. Chloe reported that Victor walked into the meeting with a face like spoiled mayo. Sharon was red in the cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from rage, the kind that curdles when your authority starts slipping through your fingers. The mood. Apocalyptic. Someone actually said, "Are we being sabotaged?" Meanwhile, I was on a rooftop bar 3 blocks away, sipping overpriced bourbon and watching LinkedIn notifications roll in like incoming missiles. CTOs, CEOs, founders, people who suddenly remembered Elias, the redundant asset. I hadn't even signed with my new company yet. That wasn't the plan. I wanted to watch them bleed first. And bleed they did. But we're not at the climax yet, because the most delicious part, that was still to come, and it involved a USB drive, a forgotten Slack backup, and a private group channel titled Operation Weasel. Wanna guess whose name was in the pinned message? The USB was matte black, no label, no keychain, just raw plastic and cold intent. I tossed it in the back of my desk drawer over a year ago after it accidentally gave me full admin rights during a migration sprint. They thought I didn't notice. I noticed. And I kept noticing every shadow file, every dev test clone, every Slack export the company forgot to encrypt before stuffing it into our internal sandbox, like digital lint. So I downloaded one copy, just one, locked it on that USB, shoved it between expired mints and a broken badge lanyard, left it there like a sleeping pill under the tongue of a dying empire. Now it was awake. Let me explain Operation Weasel. Back in Q1, right after our Series C hype train derailed and the layoffs started, a secret Slack group popped up. Private, invite only. Victor was in it. Sharon too, a few VPs. And the name, some MBA giggle, fit about weeding out non-revenue generating rodents. Cute, right? Except when you open the thread, it read like a corporate witch trial transcript. Names, color-coded tags, flight risk, politically unstable, too technical to fire. I was listed as Elias, glorified keyboard monkey, train new devs then cut. They even shared my salary breakdown. The whole channel was a cocktail of ego, cruelty, and poorly masked panic. And the pièce de résistance. Sharon, back in March, posted a meme of a guillotine captioned, "Next budget meeting." Under it, my name, laughing emojis, and Victor's little thumbs up react. You want a twist? Here's one. That entire Slack export included audio, because someone, probably Sharon, who never met a setting she didn't overclick, had voice logs auto-enabled for accessibility reasons. So, I had clips, recordings, her voice, Victor's, discussing how to slow-roll my access to production so I'd eventually look incompetent. Their plan was to build a case for demotion, track me down to Tier 1 support until I rage quit. Too bad I don't quit easy. I document. So that afternoon, while they were spinning out trying to patch up client calls and field LinkedIn messages from every CTO in the Texas area, I sent one little package, no return address, just a USB in a bubble envelope marked for legal department, urgent. I sent another to our board liaison and a third to Victor's wife, Sophia. That night at 6:41 p.m., while I was half drunk on rooftop bourbon and dopamine, Chloe from QA texted me one word. Boom. Apparently, the board convened an emergency call. Legal was fuming. HR was in lockdown. Victor disappeared from Slack mid-sentence. Like literally mid-sentence. Just poof, gone. Profile pic turned to a gray silhouette. Sharon silent. Last post was a motivational Monday meme with a kitten dangling from a tree. Hang in there. Irony's got hands and they were around her neck. But you want real blood? That started the next morning when Apex Systems made their exit public. They didn't just leave. They published a post about migrating to a more agile partner with superior dev alignment, tagging me. And my new company, who I hadn't officially joined yet, woke up to 73 emails and a text from the new CEO that just said, "Holy hell, let's talk." We talked. And what came next? Well, let's just say the guillotine turns both ways. Friday, 8:02 a.m. I'm standing in line at a greasy diner halfway through a lukewarm coffee and still tasting last night's bourbon when my phone starts buzzing like it's possessed. Not a ring, not a ping, a seizure. Slack, Gmail, LinkedIn. 3 missed calls from numbers I don't recognize. And one cryptic text from Chloe. They are in full collapse. Sharon is crying. Victor's wife went nuclear. I almost choked on my hash browns. See, I hadn't just sent the USB and dipped. I timed it. Quarter end was in 3 business days. The perfect storm. Budget approvals, board reviews, client renewals. They needed flawless optics. And instead, got Victor's private Slack messages read aloud during a compliance call because, one of those USBs landed right in the lap of a compliance officer from our largest client, Chrono Logistics, a Fortune 100 beast with lawyers like sharks in suits. Turns out those jokes about pushing non-billables into burnout and flushing old engineers with dignity PR didn't sit too well when said engineers were managing their sensitive client data. Chrono Logistics fired off a breach inquiry, so brutal it might as well have been a subpoena, and they copied the board. Within hours, the company's internal legal Slack spun up a private war room. Screenshots were flying. Legal started pulling chat logs, calendar events, HR files. Every scrap of dirt they'd once tried to bury got shoveled to the surface. And guess what name kept popping up? Elias. Because I was everywhere. Can't run operations through a skeleton crew and not have one person touch every critical system. Their brilliant plan to ghost me out of the company backfired so hard it might qualify as self-sabotage in a court of law. By 10 a.m., 2 VPs resigned for personal reasons. By noon, Victor's wife, Sophia, sweet yoga instructor, turned divorce velociraptor, posted an Instagram story that made my jaw drop. It was a photo of Victor's laptop smashed on their marble kitchen floor, captioned, "Turns out Disruption King was also Venmo Daddy for 2 interns. Woozy face. Thanks, USB." I laughed so hard I almost spilled coffee on the NDA I was about to sign. That NDA, my new job offer after Apex Systems made their public statement. I didn't have to lift a finger. 3 companies offered me C-suite roles on the spot. But I chose carefully. Picked the one with the deepest pockets, the strongest legal team, and, get this, a known interest in acquiring bleeding-out SaaS firms on the cheap. Because my story wasn't just revenge, it was a hostile preview. And I wasn't done. By 2:15 p.m., the company I just left lost 6 major clients. Not worth thinking about it lost. Gone. Like domains blacklisted, subscriptions cancelled, data pulled, staff reassigned. Board demanded an emergency shareholder call. And at 3:04 p.m., Chloe sent me a photo. Sharon pacing in heels around the lobby, clutching a manila folder and crying. Actual mascara down the cheeks ruined brunch tears. Apparently, they offered her a transition package. Translation: get the hell out before the SEC shows up. And Victor? Gone, vanished. Slack profile nuked. LinkedIn offline. Word is escorted out of the building without his designer sneakers. I imagine he tried to smug his way through the exit until legal showed him a printout from Operation Weasel. Specifically, the part where he called our CTO a walking liability in a hoodie. They say power corrupts. But Victor, he wasn't corrupt. He was careless. And careless men don't fall. They evaporate. Next part. That's where I lace my boots and walk back into the wreckage with an offer the board can't refuse. Monday morning hit like a gavel to the skull. 9 a.m. sharp. I walk through the same glass doors I used to badge into every day. Only this time I wasn't an employee. I was a prospectus. A problem with a $sign, and I dressed the part. Charcoal suit, blood red tie, and the USB in my breast pocket like a loaded pistol. The receptionist, new girl, wide-eyed, buzzed me in without hesitation. She probably assumed I was an investor. Technically, he wasn't wrong. Upstairs, the boardroom looked like a crime scene. Coffee cups with lipstick stains, legal pads scribbled to death, half-eaten scones from a vendor they could no longer afford. At the head of the table sat Graham, interim CEO, a man who used to avoid eye contact with me in the lunch line. He was sweating through his collar like a sinner in court. "Elias," he said, rising awkwardly like the chair was glued to his spine. "Thanks for coming." He didn't shake his hand, just dropped a leather folder onto the table. Inside, a pitch deck, 20 pages titled, "How to Save a Dying Brand, and Who You'll Need to Fire First." Silence. Graham flipped the first page, then the second. Then he froze at the third. Client retention graphs read, "Everywhere. Losses in the millions." Projections that looked more like autopsy reports. Then came the kicker. My proposed acquisition model. See, my new employer, let's call them Nexus Corp, had quietly built a war chest. They've been watching my former company stumble like a drunk on black ice for over a year. All they needed was an insider to draw the map to the pressure points. I was that map, and now they were ready to pounce. "I'm not here to rescue you," I said, calm and surgical. "I'm here to carve off the pieces that still have value." Graham blinked like a lizard waking up under a heat lamp. "You're proposing acquisition." "No," I replied. "You don't get acquired. You get dismantled. But we'll take your best engineers, the ones you forgot to fire, the good tech stack after we torch your Frankenstein monstrosities, and about 12% of your client base. The rest? Let them rot." A board member cleared her throat. "And what do you want in return?" I leaned in, voice like ice on glass. First, public statement. You admit the leadership, Victor, Sharon, the whole Operation Weasel clown parade, engaged in unethical sabotage, retaliatory HR practices, and obstruction of internal oversight. Graham blanched. Second, I continued, you write me a glowing departure letter retroactive to last month with full credit for securing all major accounts I touched. And third, I smiled, you give me the rights to my code, every module I architected. We both know you can't use it anymore, without me anyway. More silence. Let it simmer like a slow boil in an old cast-iron skillet. They didn't answer then. Didn't have to. The smell of desperation in that room was louder than words. I left them with the folder and a warning. You've got 72 hours. After that, the offer expires along with your leverage. As I stepped back into the elevator, my phone buzzed again. LinkedIn. Another message from a former client. One word, signed. And that was the 6th account to follow me in 4 days. Bloodbath wasn't over, but the carving knife was still in my hand. Wednesday, 7:42 p.m. Graham called me from a parking garage, voice echoing, shaking. The kind of call you make when you've got nothing left to lose, and just enough shame to not do it from the kitchen table. We'll sign, he muttered, but we want a clause. Quiet transition, no media, no LinkedIn victory lap. I was sitting poolside at my hotel, glass of rye in hand, feet in the water. I let the silence stretch until I could hear him breathing through his nose. No media for me, I said. But I can't control what your ex-girls say. Or Victor's wife. Or, the SEC. He went quiet. I pictured him gripping the wheel of his used Tesla, jaw locked, staring into the oil-dark distance while his career did jumping jacks off a ledge. Fine, he said. You'll get your code, your credits. We'll issue the statement, but for Christ's sake, just stabilize. I didn't reply, because stability was never on the menu. By Thursday morning, the press release dropped, timid, apologetic, polished within an inch of its life. It read like an obituary disguised as a thank you card. After a detailed internal review, we've acknowledged a failure in leadership and communication that impacted both client relationships and internal operations. Effective immediately, we're restructuring and refocusing on integrity, transparency, and technical excellence. We wish Elias every success in his next chapter and recognize his instrumental contributions to our legacy. Of course, but I didn't need truth. I needed receipts. And this was Exhibit A. 2 hours later, my inbox lit up like Vegas. Recruiters, journalists, clients with open budgets and closed fists, asking what it would take to replicate the magic. Some of them I replied to, some I left on read. Then came the most unexpected ping of all. An internal memo. Leaked. Anonymous sender. Subject line, you weren't the only target. Attached, redacted Slack logs, fresh ones from another private channel. This one's still active. Different name, clean slate, same flavor. Back channel chats, whisper campaigns, planned performance reevaluations. And this time, it included names still employed, including Chloe, my QA mole, the woman who risked her job to keep me in the loop while the ship burned. Turns out they'd flagged her 6 months ago as emotionally volatile and potential liability. Possible whistleblower. My hands clenched around the glass. Rye sloshed over the rim. I read the line 3 times. Push her to resign quietly. No unemployment risk. I stared at that sentence like it was daring me. They were still playing. So, I called Chloe. She answered on the first ring. Hey, send your resume, I interrupted. You start Monday. Full salary, signing bonus, title upgrade, no interview. Silence. Then, "Holy, are you serious?" "Dead serious." "And Chloe, yeah, tell the others. The ones still in there. The ones they tried to bury." Her breath hitched. "Tell them I'm building something better. And I'm not done pulling people out of that wreck." Because now it wasn't just about revenge. It was about recruitment. And I wasn't building a team. I was building a goddamn army. Friday, 5:47 p.m. I'm pacing the floor of my new office. Yes, office. Not cubicle, not hot desk, not open concept hellhole with a view of Chad's armpits, and watching the final contract come through. Client #12 signed. That was 12 clients in 2 weeks, 7 of which were on multi-year retainers, and all of them came voluntarily. No cold calls, no pitches, just whispers. Just people sick of being treated like invoices on legs. People who remembered what it felt like to have someone who fixed things instead of scheduling yet another meeting about feelings and scalability. I was sipping on a beer that cost more than my old lunch budget when my new COO, Lena, stepped in. Ex-Goldman, sharp as a razor and twice as silent. She nodded toward the screen. "That the last one for this week?" I said, "Next week we hunt whales." She smirked and slid a manila envelope across the table. "Something you'll want to see. Victor resurfaced." I froze. Inside the envelope, screenshots. A new LinkedIn profile under a variation of his name, Victor M. Lowe. Same smug face, but now rebranded as a consultant for scalable leadership cultures. Even had the audacity to quote Sun Tzu in his bio. I almost choked on my drink, but that wasn't the kicker. There was an event registration too. Tech conference in San Jose. Keynote speaker, Victor himself. Topic: how to retain top talent in an agile economy. I laughed so loud I scared Lena's poodle. "He's not just crawling out of the rubble," I muttered. "He's selling blueprints to the building he torched." Lena nodded. We could let it go. Or, she didn't have to finish. Or I could show San Jose just what kind of talent Victor retains. The plan formed before she even left the room. Step 1. Register under a shell company. Step 2. Book a booth directly across from the keynote stage. Step 3. Prepare a quiet little demo for our software suite. One that just so happens to include anonymized, time-stamped audit trails that prove exactly who sabotaged what, when, and how. Oh, and remember the leaked clean slate logs? We turned them into a case study. Ethics as architecture, presented as fiction, of course, but anyone who knew, knew. Saturday morning, I flew to San Jose. Sunday, I walked into that conference center like a man with a match in a hay barn. Booth setup was clean. Minimal, surgical, and right at the center, a looping video montage titled, "What Happens When You Underestimate the People Building Your Empire?" It showed no names, no faces, just lines of code, contracts dissolving in flames, and a single quote from Sharon. "He's just lucky we tolerate him." The reactions were immediate. Some laughed, some whispered. A few execs pulled me aside to ask, "Is this based on a true story?" I just smiled and said, "Does it matter? It's still happening." Victor took the stage at 2:01 p.m. Sharp. By 2:07, the murmurs from our booth drowned out his mic. By 2:10, his LinkedIn went dark. And by 2:13, someone threw a stress ball, trademark, at his face. Conference security did not intervene. Afterward, I left without a word. No swagger. Because this wasn't the end. It was the demo. And the full release was still uploading. Monday, 6:06 a.m. My phone lit up before the sun even dared show its face. Dozens of notifications, articles, screenshots, anonymous tips. A Reddit thread with 40,000 upvotes titled "Ex-CEO tries to keynote after losing 30 millimeters in clients. gets memed into oblivion. The thumbnail. Victor mid-sneeze, mid-stress ball impact, eyes half shut like he just saw his karma overdraft in real time. Caption. Agile this. And beneath it, my booth. That looping video. The one quote that had become its own battle cry. He's just lucky we tolerate him. By noon, a minor tech blog had spun the story into something biblical. By 3 p.m., TechCrunch picked it up and called it the SaaS Exodus. How one engineer sparked a client rebellion. And by dinner time, my face, me, Elias from IT, being photoshopped onto Moses parting the Red Sea. Except the sea was filled with burned NDAs and Victor's dumb designer sneakers. It should have felt victorious. Final. Like the last scene in a revenge flick where the villain gets hoisted by his own petard and the hero walks off into a sunrise of stock options and moral clarity. But life doesn't do clean final. Because around 7:18 p.m., Chloe called, voice shaking. Not with fear, with purpose. Remember clean slate? It goes deeper. I found another drive buried in archived backups. It's not just Victor and Sharon. My stomach did a slow roll. What do you mean? I mean they sold internal data, client data, to partners. You weren't just collateral, Elias. You were the firewall. And when they couldn't manipulate you, they tried to erase you. I sat there in silence on the balcony, looking at the city I no longer owed anything to, realizing that every smug smile, every performance of concern, every passive-aggressive little box they tried to put me in wasn't about performance at all. It was about control. They were scared of me. So I did what any reasonable man would do after nuking a corrupt company and watching its leadership drown in their own Kool-Aid. I picked up my laptop, wrote a final report, attached every shred of what Chloe found, forwarded it to federal compliance, blind copied every major client who jumped ship, and a few who hadn't yet. And then I closed the laptop. No announcement, no press, no LinkedIn post about how I learned and grew from adversity, because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a USB in the right envelope. Sometimes it's a system you built so well they never saw you pulling the wires. And sometimes it's the sound of your old employer laying off their last remaining staff while you sip rye in a room paid for by their biggest client. Sharon is selling crystals on Etsy now. Claims rose quartz saved her career. Victor's keynote is a meme. I hear he's consulting for a startup in Reno. Unpaid. And me. I run a company where no one has to tolerate anyone. We build, we protect, we remember. And sometimes, late at night, when I need a little comfort, I play that video. The one with Sharon's voice. He's just lucky we tolerate him. Damn right I was lucky.